Welcome back to my channel, friends. We are on block 8 of our Sew With Me series. So for block number 8, we're going to be making the traditional Ohio star block, which is this one right here. So as you can see, our star points are actually more set on what appears to be kind of more like a diagonal as opposed to this one right here. So these used flying geese. This one is going to use a method called quarter square triangles, and so that is what I'm going to teach you today. And I have a really easy way to make these quarter square triangles. It's pretty foolproof and they just come together so quick and easy. So let's go ahead and get started on our Ohio star block. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be making the Ohio star block. This is actually the more traditional version of the Ohio star. We did make one a little bit earlier on in this series and it looked like this. And just having these on here, this kind of tri thing here, is kind of what makes it sort of the Ohio star vibe. So this was the first one we made, and this is definitely a much easier block to make. So we are going to step up our game today though, and we are going to make this one. So this one has what's called quarter square triangles to make these star points. It's going to be really fun, and I hope you will be learning something new. As always, make sure that you download your PDF pattern in the description box below this video. If you're having a hard time with that, right click on the download link and click select or save file as, and maybe that will help you get that download. So you're going to need some fun fabrics, and you're going to need some backgrounds. I have chosen this kind of low volume greenish print. You're also going to need something for your center, and then you're going to need something for your points and that accent color on the inside of the points. Again, all of the exact cutting instructions are going to be on that PDF download, so make sure that you follow along with that. So we're going to go ahead and set these fabrics aside for right now. So we're going to start off with our larger squares. So you're going to need 2 C squares, 1 D, and then 1 of your B or background squares. And we're going to do the same process to both. So I've got a background and a D, and then for my C squares, I'm going to place those right side down on top of both. And then I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner diagonally on both. And then we are going to stitch 1/4 of an inch away on both sides of this diagonal line that we are drawing. So we've got our line. We're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch away on both sides of these lines, and then we'll cut them in half, and we'll have 2 half square triangles of each color. Okay, so we've got both of our half square triangles, and I'm actually just going to cut them both at the same time. Make sure you are cutting the right direction. Okay, and so now I've got 2 half square triangles that have the background and 2 that have our kind of accent fabric. Okay, and then we're going to just take these over to our ironing board. And I'm actually going to press them all towards this red or C fabric. That way they'll all be going the same way, and then our seams will nest later on. And you've probably seen me do this before, but I just kind of stack them. Okay. And so now we've got 2 with our background and 2 with our D. And now we're going to kind of mix these up a little bit. So I'm going to take 1 of these, and you can trim these first if you want. I think I'm going to wait and just trim them after. So we're going to go ahead and take 1 and make sure that your red fabric is going one direction. You're going to take the one with the background fabric and put it exactly the opposite direction, so that when you fold it back, you've got your quarter square triangle. So the reds are on opposite sides, okay? And then your accent and your background are on opposite sides. And I like to kind of do that just to double check and make sure that I'm sewing the correct way. And now you're going to sew across your seam. So you don't want to sew with your seam, because that would be doing nothing but giving you the same half square triangle you started with. And so I'm going to go ahead and draw a line on here so that I do not get confused. And again, I'm going across my seam. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to sew 1/4 inch on either side of this drawn line for both of these. For this one, you want to just feel this and make sure that your seams are nesting. And that way you'll have a nice seam line there. And I can even just throw a pin in there just to make sure nothing kind of moves around on me. So I'm going to scoot this one over to my sewing machine, and then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Again, making sure that my reds are on opposite sides of the block. And then I'm kind of just using my fingers here just to press that seam together so I can feel them nesting really nicely. And then I'm going to, again, draw a line corner to corner, like so. Throw a pin in here to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, and then we're going to sew again 1/4 inch on both sides of this line. Now here we are, we're going to trim these in half. And before you trim, you might want to just double check that you've got what you were going for there, just to make sure. Because if you sewed the wrong direction or something, then now would be the time to fix it. So just give it a quick look before you trim. Don't ask me how, I know that. Okay, and now we can just press these. So I'm just going to set that seam and then press. This isn't really going to matter which way you're pressing particularly. And then these hopefully will be just a little bit bigger than you need them to be so that we can trim them down to the exact size. I like to do that whenever I'm doing blocks like this where there's kind of room for error. I will make them just slightly larger, and then that way I can trim them down so that they're perfect. So for our 6.5 inch block, we're going to trim these down to 4.5 inches. I'm going to use this diagonal on my ruler. Actually, I'm going to turn it this way so I see my 4.5 lines. And I'm just lining up all the 4.5 inch points on my ruler with these seams, plus I have my little diagonal line here to help guide me. So I am going to be trimming off a little bit more on these than I would normally trim off on a block. But like I said, I really prefer to make these just a little bit bigger so that I can trim them down so they're nice and accurate versus not having enough when I'm done. Okay, so here is one of our blocks. I'm going to go ahead and trim all of the rest of them to be 4.5. Okay, so here is the hard part of our block all done, and now we just have to set it up. So how this block is going to go are our D squares are going to be going towards the center, just like that, and then our star points are going to be going on the outside. And congratulations, by the way, you have just made a quarter square triangle, quarter square, 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles. You're going to grab your E square for the center, and then you can just grab your background squares. These are your A squares, and you can just put one in each corner. And if you do have a directional print, make sure it's going the right way. If you're a beginner, it might be easier to not use directional prints. Also, by the way, if they're going a different direction, I mean, who cares? Okay, so now we're going to just sew our 3 rows together using a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to go ahead and chain piece, which means I'm going to take this row and flip it right side down on this row and sew it, and then I'll add this 3rd row. Okay, so we'll just flip this, flip that, and flip that. And I like to do it this way so that I don't accidentally twist any of my star points. Okay, and I'm going to slide this over to my machine. You're welcome to pin if you want. So here's our first row, and then it's got twisted. We can just unwrap it just like this and add our third row. And I do like to leave these still attached. That way I'm sure not to turn anything around. Now because these are they're still attached, I will just stick a pin in these just to hold them in place so that when I get to my machine, they don't fall or get twisted. Okay, 1/4 of an inch down this side. All right, now let's take a quick peek, make sure everything is still going the right direction. It's still attached, so that's good. For this one, we're going to be pressing out on these outside rows because again, there's no seams there. And then we'll press in towards this center fabric because again, no seams. I'm going to go ahead and flip it upside down to make my life a little bit easier. Okay, so as you can see, these seams are going out, these seams are going in, these seams are going out, so everything will nest nicely when we sew our rows together. So I'm just going to lay this one down on top and nest my seams right here, and that's always where I'm going to pin as well. If you'd like, you can snip these little pieces holding these together at this point. I don't know, I just leave them there, so you can do whatever you prefer. Okay, so now we're going to sew that, and then we'll come back and we'll add this bottom row. And here we have our Ohio star. We just need to press it, and since there's kind of seams everywhere, I'm just going to press out towards these corners because there's just less seams there. I'm going to set my seam first and then just flip it back. Of course, we just need to trim this block up. Again, I'm going to try and make sure that my star points are 1/4 of an inch away from my edges. This block actually looks really good. This block looks great, you guys. I'll barely even need to trim it up, but I will anyway. Okay, and here we go, our finished Ohio star block. So in this block, we learned how to make these 1/4 square triangles. As you can see, they were really easy. You just have to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. And then you can come up with this super cute block. All right, guys, that was the Ohio star block number 8 in our Sew With Me series. I hope you're enjoying this series. Now, the Ohio star block has so many different things you can do with it. It might have these 3 being the same color and this being the background color, but I went ahead and just made it scrappy. I like the way that it looks, and I like having a different center as well. And of course, like the other blocks, you can really change the look of this block if you were to put your darker fabrics where I have my backgrounds and then put something lighter where I have my prints, like a white and a black or a white and a dark gray, and that would really make this block pop. So that is the Ohio star block. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to thumbs up and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. I hope you enjoyed today's. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next video. What block was this? 1, 2, 3, 4. So as I mentioned we're going to draw a line, maybe.